I never thought I'd be the guy telling a story like this, but here we are. My name's Mark, and I married Jessica about 5 years ago. She's beautiful, confident, a little bitchy sometimes, but overall I thought we had a good life. Or at least I did. We'd been through a lot, work stress, some petty arguments, but nothing that made me suspicious or paranoid. Until the last few months. It started with little things, her phone buzzing constantly when she was around, her being overly cautious about hiding her messages, even from me. I used to think she was just secretive, maybe trying to surprise me or something, but it felt different this time. She'd get defensive whenever I'd ask about her phone, say I was overthinking it. I let it go because I didn't want to be that guy who's paranoid about his wife. Then came the weirdest sign. She started canceling plans last minute, saying she was busy or working late, but I'd catch her sneaking off with her phone or whispering on calls. And her attitude. It was bitchier than usual, snapping at me over small things, rolling her eyes, acting like I was some sort of inconvenience. It was like she was angry at the whole world, or maybe just me. One day I decided to check her phone. I know, big mistake, but I was just curious and something about her behavior felt off. I didn't expect to find what I did. There were messages, not just casual texts, but flirty, intimate ones. And not with her friends, no, these messages were with someone I'd never expect, her doctor, Dr. Carter, the guy she saw during her annual physical. She'd always talked about how professional he was, how she trusted him completely. Well, turns out she trusted him a little too much. The messages were explicit, talking about how she loved the way he touched her, how she fantasized about him during her lonely nights. There were pictures, nothing pornographic, but enough to tell me they'd been more than just doctor and patient. And the worst part, she'd seen him behind my back for months. I remember feeling like my stomach dropped out when I saw it. All that time, all those nights when she came home late, stressed, edgy, she was screwing her doctor. I was stunned. I kept reading the messages, my hands trembling. Part of me wanted to just throw her out right then, but I also wanted to understand. How long had this been going on? Why him? Why not just leave me? I felt like I'd been blindsided by my own wife, who was supposed to be my partner, my confidant. Instead, she was cheating on me with some guy who was supposed to be helping her, not screwing her. I needed to confront her. I couldn't keep this bottled up. So the next day, I asked her to sit down. She was bitchy as usual, acting like she didn't have a care in the world. When I showed her her phone, her face went blank for a second, then she started lying. "That's just a misunderstanding," she said. "He's just a friend, Mark. You don't understand how busy I am, how stressed I am. You're just jealous. Honestly, you're paranoid." She brushed it off so casually, like I was overreacting, but I knew better. I could see it in her eyes. She knew she was caught, and she hated that I found out. The thing is, I love her. I really do, but this betrayal, it's like a punch to the gut. I've been hurt, angry, confused. I don't even recognize the woman I married anymore, and I don't know what to do next. Do I forgive her? Do I fight for this marriage? Or do I cut my losses and get out? The betrayal runs deep, and honestly, I feel like my world is crumbling. After I confronted her, the atmosphere in our house shifted completely. Jessica was defensive, trying to downplay everything, but I could see the guilt lurking behind her bitchy facade. She kept insisting it was a harmless affair, just some stupid flirtation, nothing serious. She called me jealous and paranoid, said I was overreacting because I didn't trust her. That really hit a nerve. Trust. How could I trust a woman who was sneaking around behind my back with her doctor? I was furious, but I didn't lash out right away. Instead, I just sat there, feeling this boiling rage mixed with heartbreak. How could she do this? After everything we'd been through, how could she throw it away on some guy who just happened to be her doctor? I kept thinking about how she always made me feel like I was the problem. Like I was insecure or imagining things. Turns out I wasn't imagining anything. The worst part was the emotional fallout. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her messages, her words describing how much she loved the way Dr. Carter touched her. I kept asking myself, was I just some sort of placeholder while she looked for something better, or was I never enough? I'd always thought we had a good thing, but now I saw her for who she really was, someone selfish, manipulative, and totally willing to betray her vows. I started to feel this deep sadness but also a kind of numbness. I didn't want to cry or break down, but inside I was dying a little more each day. I kept replaying all the moments I thought were normal, her laughter, our dinners, those little touches, and now I saw them as lies. She'd been lying to my face about everything, and I'd been so blind. I'd trusted her so much. How could she do this? How could she lie so easily? I needed a plan. I couldn't just accept this betrayal and pretend everything was fine. I decided I'd get some time to think, to decide whether I wanted to stay and try to fix things or walk away. I knew I wasn't going to forgive her easily, not after this. I started researching what to do, what my legal options were, and how I could gather more evidence. I wanted to know exactly how deep this thing went. Meanwhile, Jessica was still acting bitchy, throwing attitude at me every chance she got. She'd deny everything, call me insecure, accuse me of snooping because I was crazy. She refused to admit to any of it, which made me more determined. If she thought she could just brush this under the rug with her lies, she was wrong. I wasn't going to be the guy who gets cheated on and just tolerates it. She needed to face the consequences of what she did. One night, I caught her trying to delete some messages on her phone. I saw her hurriedly wiping her screen when I walked into the room. That was the final straw. I realized she was actively trying to hide her tracks. That made me decide I'd had enough. I wasn't going to let her keep lying and sneaking around. I wanted the truth out in the open, no matter how much it hurt. I started planning my next move. I wasn't just going to confront her again. I was going to gather everything I needed to make a clean break if it came to that. I had a lawyer friend I trusted, and I started to think about how I could approach this legally. I didn't want her to get away with it, and I definitely didn't want to be the guy who stayed with a cheating wife, pretending everything was fine. No, I was done being a fool. I deserved better than this, and so did I. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. Jessica kept up her act, acting innocent when I'd bring up the messages or her late nights. She'd throw a fit, call me paranoid, say I was ruining everything with my accusations. But I wasn't stupid anymore. I saw her patterns, how she'd slip her phone into her purse whenever I got close, how her stories about where she was going kept changing. She was trying to cover her tracks, and I was starting to see through her bullshit. One morning, I decided I needed to hit her where it hurt, her pride. I set up a hidden camera in the living room at night just to see what she was up to when she thought I wasn't watching. I didn't tell her I was doing it. I just wanted to catch her in the act, see if she'd slip up again. That night, I hid in the bedroom, watching her on my phone as she sat on the couch, texting away. Her phone pinged, and I saw the message come through from Dr. Carter. I froze. It was a naked selfie of her, one she had probably taken during a quick moment of vulnerability. My heart sank. I couldn't believe it. That was the proof I needed. I felt this sick, twisting feeling in my stomach. That moment I realized I'd been played. She was lying, manipulating, and now she was sending explicit photos to some guy she was cheating with. I felt betrayed all over again, but this time I'd seen it with my own eyes. My chest was tight, my fists clenched. I felt like an idiot for trusting her, for thinking maybe she'd change, maybe she'd see what she was doing. But she hadn't. After that, I knew I had to act. I couldn't let her keep doing this, not just for me, but for myself. I started to think about how to end it all, telling her I knew everything, confronting her with her own stupidity and lies. But I also knew I needed to be smart about it. No impulsive moves. I wasn't going to get caught off guard again. I wanted to have all my ducks in a row before I faced her next. I also contacted her doctor, Dr. Carter. I found out his wife, who I'd never even spoken to before, had somehow gotten wind of the affair. Turns out she'd been snooping through his phone and found the messages. She reached out to me, told me everything, and basically warned me about their entire sick arrangement. Her message was almost more shocking than Jessica's betrayal. She said she was furious, that she'd been blindsided, and that she was planning to get revenge herself. She told me she'd been trying to warn Jessica to stop, but Jessica kept lying. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just a one-time thing. It was a full-blown mess that was about to explode. That call flipped my world upside down even more. I felt a strange mixture of anger, sadness, and a strange sense of clarity. The woman I'd married was capable of lying so blatantly, not just to me but to everyone around her. And her doctor, he wasn't just some guy I'd never hear from again. Now he was involved in a war I didn't even want to understand. And I knew, deep down, I had to make a choice, fight for what I wanted or walk away for good. Whatever I decided, I didn't want her to win. I was done being the fool in this game. While I waited to see what would happen next, I started planning my own revenge, not in some destructive way, but to make her feel the same pain she'd caused me. I wanted her to see she couldn't just throw away our marriage, cheat on me, and then pretend it was nothing. I wanted her to realize I wasn't going to be a pushover anymore. That's when I decided I'd send her a text, one that would cut deep, something that would make her realize I wasn't going to stay silent. I wanted her to feel the full weight of what she'd done, and I knew I had to be clever about it. This game was just beginning. I spent the next few days in a fog, replaying everything over and over, trying to decide what my next move should be. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was hurt, betrayed, and honestly a little scared. Jessica had always been the fiery type, but I never thought she'd be capable of something this cold and calculated. Her lies, her sneaky texts, the explicit photos, each new piece of evidence made me feel like I was drowning. I couldn't believe I married someone so selfish, so willing to destroy what we built for a quick fuck with her doctor. I knew I needed to act, but I also knew I had to be smart. I couldn't just blow up everything without a plan. I reached out to a lawyer friend of mine, Tom, who gave me some solid advice. Gather all the evidence I could, stay calm, and don't give her any reason to deny what I already knew. That meant keeping my phone and computer clean, no slip-ups. So I started collecting every piece of proof, screenshots, saved messages, even copies of her photos. Meanwhile, Jessica was still acting bitchy, more aggressive than ever. She'd give me the silent treatment, then throw petty insults when she thought I wasn't paying attention. She'd claim I was insecure and jealous, but I knew the truth. I wasn't jealous, I was furious. I'd never been that guy before, but this betrayal turned me into someone I didn't recognize. I was ready to expose her, to make her face the reality that she couldn't keep this hidden forever. One evening, I was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her message history again when I got a text from Dr. Carter's wife. I almost didn't believe it at first. She'd found out about everything, and she was furious. She blasted me with a long message, calling Jessica a manipulative, lying bitch who'd played them both. She said she'd been secretly watching her husband's phone and had uncovered her affair. Her words stung almost as much as Jessica's betrayal. This wasn't just a matter of two people cheating. It was a web of lies, deception, and broken trust on an epic scale. Her message also said she was going to take matters into her own hands. She wasn't going to let Jessica get away with ruining lives without consequence. She told me she was planning to confront her, to make Jessica realize the mess she'd made. I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of validation. I thought I was alone in this, but now I knew I was. Jessica had upset more lives than I'd imagined, and I wasn't going to let her control the narrative anymore. That night, I sat alone in my room, staring at my phone, weighing my options. I could confront her directly, or I could wait for her to slip up again and then strike. I knew the truth was out there, and Jessica's facade was cracking. My plan was to keep quiet for now, to let her think she was still in control. Meanwhile, I'd prepare everything I needed to make her pay for what she'd done. I wasn't just going to walk away, no, I wanted her to feel the same hurt, the same betrayal she'd inflicted on me. Deep down, I still loved her, but love doesn't mean blind trust. I realized I'd been a fool to think she was everything I wanted. Now, I was faced with a choice: stay and fight for my dignity, or walk away and rebuild myself from the wreckage. Whichever way it went, I knew one thing for sure: she'd messed with the wrong guy. Jessica's days of lying and manipulating were numbered, and the fallout was about to begin. The days that followed were a blur of planning and waiting. I kept everything to myself, pretending like I was still the naive guy she married. Jessica, of course, kept up her bitchy act, snapping at me over nothing, pretending everything was fine, acting like I was the crazy one. But I knew better. I saw through her bullshit now. Every smirk, every eye roll was just her trying to cover her tracks, trying to convince herself she was untouchable. I spent hours going over everything I had, screenshots, messages, even her photos. I was gathering my ammunition, knowing that the moment I confronted her, she'd try to spin her lies again. I wanted to be prepared to have the upper hand. I also reached out to her doctor's wife again, just to keep her updated. We didn't plan anything together, but I wanted her to know I wasn't backing down. I told her I had enough evidence to end everything, and she responded with rage, more proof that this mess was about to explode. One evening, I decided to test her. I casually mentioned going to the gym, knowing she'd get suspicious if I didn't follow my usual routine. I told her I'd be back late, but in reality, I was sneaking out to meet a private investigator I'd hired. I wanted to see if she'd slip up, if she'd do something stupid. I gave her enough rope. That night, I saw her act even more bitchy. She was texting furiously on her phone, trying to hide it whenever I appeared nearby. I caught her staring at her screen with a guilty look on her face. Then, just as I suspected, she got a call from Dr. Carter. I watched her hurriedly silence the call, then quickly open a different messaging app. My heart pounded. I knew she was still lying, still hiding something. I started to realize she wasn't going to stop until I forced her hand. The next day, I finally decided I'd had enough of waiting. I called her into the living room, calmly but firmly. She looked at me like I was about to accuse her of something even worse, but I just looked her in the eyes and said, "Jessica, I know everything about you and Dr. Carter. I've seen the messages, the photos, I've got evidence, and your little games are over." Her face drained of color for a moment, then she scoffed, trying to brush it off like I was just some paranoid fool. But I pulled out my phone and showed her the screenshots. Her entire expression changed, panic setting in. She started to lie, of course. Denied everything, called me crazy, even said I was stalking her. That was her typical move: deny, accuse, deflect. But I didn't buy it. I told her she'd crossed a line and that I was done playing her game. I said I was filing for divorce, that I'd keep the evidence and make sure everyone knew what she'd done. Her bitchy mask cracked completely at that point. She yelled, threw her phone on the floor, and stormed out of the room, screaming about how I was ruining her life. That moment felt like a turning point. I didn't want her to get away with this, not without consequences. I knew I had to act fast. I called my lawyer, scheduled a meeting, and made sure I had everything needed for a clean break. I also contacted her doctor's wife again, letting her know I was serious. She responded with relief, saying she was planning her own move to expose their affair. It was like I was finally part of a team, fighting back against the lies and betrayal. In that moment, I realized how deeply Jessica had lied, manipulated, and hurt everyone around her. I felt a strange mix of empowerment and heartbreak. I still loved her, but I knew I couldn't keep living in this nightmare. I had to choose between fighting for my dignity or surrendering to the pain. The truth was out now, and there was no going back. Whatever came next, I was ready to face it. I wasn't going to be a victim anymore. The day I filed the divorce papers was one of the hardest days of my life. I sat across from my lawyer, hands trembling slightly as I signed my name on the dotted line. It wasn't just about ending a marriage. It was about reclaiming my life from the wreckage of lies. Jessica's reaction was exactly what I anticipated. She flipped out, screaming at me, calling me every name in the book, trying to shame me into changing my mind. But I was done. Her bitchy attitude, her manipulations, her betrayal, it all shattered whatever respect I still had left for her. In the weeks that followed, she tried to spin it all, to act like I was the bad guy. But I didn't care anymore. I had everything documented, every message, every photo, every lie she'd told. I knew her game, and I was prepared. I moved out of the house into a rented apartment, giving myself space to breathe and heal. The funny thing is, despite the heartbreak and anger, I felt a weight lifting off my shoulders. For the first time in months, I felt like I was finally in control again. The aftermath wasn't easy. Jessica kept trying to reach out, begging for forgiveness, crying about how she made a mistake, how she'd change, how she couldn't live without me. But I knew better. I saw her for what she was, a selfish, manipulative woman who threw away everything for a quick thrill. I wasn't going to Let her guilt trip me back into a situation I knew was toxic. I told her I needed space, that I was done, and that I'd move on without her. Her doctor's wife, meanwhile, was moving forward with her own plans. She gathered enough evidence to expose both her husband and Jessica. I heard she had contacted the local medical board, and I was told her husband was under investigation for misconduct. It was a messy, painful end for everyone involved, but honestly I felt some small relief knowing that justice was happening in its own way. Looking back, I realize I've learned a lot from this nightmare. Trust is fragile and betrayal cuts deep, more than I ever imagined. But I also learned that you can't control other people's choices. All you can do is take back control of your own life, stand up for yourself, and walk away from the toxicity. Jessica's lies, her manipulations, they don't define me. I've come to accept that I deserve better, and I refuse to settle for anything less. In the end, I'm grateful I caught her when I did. It hurt like hell, but it also woke me up. Now, I focus on rebuilding myself emotionally, financially, and mentally. I don't harbor hatred anymore, I just feel a quiet sense of closure. Whatever future I have now, it's mine to shape. And I know one thing for sure, I'll never let someone betray me like that again. Trust is earned, and now I know to be cautious. Because sometimes the people closest to us are the ones who hurt us the most. But I'll move on stronger, wiser, and finally free.